Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If? Seals of Forgotten Time Chapter 7. Naruto looked at his plate to see eggs and sausage, with hash browns and most of all, 3 pancakes stacked high. Unfortunately that was about 5 minutes ago. Now all that remained was syrupy residue and bits of eggs. The silvery-haired shinobi leaned back and patted his stomach in content, as he looked around the table. Like him, everybody had the same amount of food. And also like him, they were rubbing their bellies in content. Well, the children were. Tsunade was picking her teeth with a sannin needle, to remove some excess sausage skin. That was a delicious breakfast, Naruto-kun. Suon said, smiling at her fiancé. Why thank you, Suhaime. Naruto said, smiling at her, before he turned to the children. How did you like the meal, you three? They each perked up and extended their plates. Can we have seconds? They each said with smiles on their faces. Naruto rubbed his chin in thought. Maybe later. Now is the time to get you three some better clothes. The 3 children frowned, before the prospect of getting new things entered their minds, and they smiled brightly. Really? We're going to get new clothes? Konan said with hearts in her eyes. Ah geez, females and their urge to shop. Naruto nearly forced himself to think. Konan, Tsunade, you two should go together. I'll take Nagato and Yahiko, he said sweetly to the girls in the room. Of course, you would probably buy her things she didn't want. Tsunade said, hugging the blue-haired child against her bosom. Naruto appeared behind Nagato and Yahiko and rubbed each of their heads. So then it's set, Naruto said, smirking. He looked at Yahiko. You ready to get ready, smartass? I'm ready as I can be, stupid, Yahiko said, making Naruto's eyebrow twitch. Nagato could feel the aura around Naruto and shuddered. I think you should stop with the insults, Yahiko, the redhead whispered. Never, it's fun, the orange-haired boy whispered back. Oh, I'm gonna make you boys strong, Naruto said, smirking as they disappeared in a body flicker. Tsunade and Konan just stood there looking at the interaction and was sweat dropping. Naruto-sensei isn't going to torture me too, is he? Konan asked with concern in her voice and eyes. Tsunade looked down at the cute girl and frowned. Let's go shopping and not think about that, she said, ushering the brunette to the door. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto walked around the small village with his 2 children in tow. Yes, now that he's thinking about it, he kind of considered the 3 orphans as his children. I think it would have happened even if Nagato wasn't my cousin, he thought, smiling as Yahiko grabbed his hand, dragging him towards a clothes store. Come on, stupid, in here, Yahiko continued to taunt. Naruto just ignored the insult and allowed himself to be dragged by the child. Nagato just followed them, already having given up on stopping Yahiko from insulting his cousin. Hello, welcome to my clothing store. I hope you enjoy your shopping, a sweet middle-aged woman said. Naruto smiled at her and nodded a thanks. It was then that he noticed that Yahiko had let go of his hand and was currently running through the store. Naruto looked down at his cousin. Nagato, why don't you go find something to wear? He said, nudging the child towards some racks. Hi, Itoko-sensei, Nagato said, walking forward and joining Yahiko in shopping. Naruto raised his eyebrow at Nagato's title for him. Well, it's better than stupid or idiot, or ignoramus. How does he even know that word? He thought incredulously. Ah, your children are adorable. Naruto heard a voice from behind him. He turned to see the shopkeeper smiling. What? They're not my kids. But I do think of them as my children, Naruto said softly with a smile. So, you're a single parent raising 2 young boys. That's kind of sexy, she said softly, finding Naruto incredibly handsome and brave for raising 2 children. Naruto was about to answer when his mouth zipped shut and sweat started rolling all over his face. I'd hate to tell you, but that hunk of man is already taken. The woman turned around to see Tsunade standing there, with Konan by her side. And how do you know? She asked, unaware of the consequences. I'm his fiancé, that's how, the blonde said, cracking her knuckles. Fortunately, Naruto was able to quell Tsunade's irritation by lightly grasping her fists in his. Calm down, Suhaime. She didn't know the situation of the topic, he spoke softly. While Naruto was calming Tsunade down, Conan joined her fellow orphan family. How long have you two been here? She asked, eyeing their separate piles of clothing. A couple of minutes and we've already got 3 outfits, each. Yahiko said, looking at his clothes in acceptance. Are you just now starting to shop? Nagato asked from his position on a nearby bench, trying on a pair of black shoes. The brunette shook her head. No, this was like the second place we went to since leaving the hotel. What? How did you already shop at a different store in the span of no less than 10 minutes? They both shouted, before only Yahiko spoke. Conan giggled at their shocked faces. The last place was really good. It was too bad they didn't have any more clothes that could fit me, she said, smiling as she looked at the adult couple. Naruto currently had Tsunade's face in his hands, palm on each cheek. Tsunade, when are you going to calm down? He asked, a little irritated. As soon as I have this baby, she nearly screamed. Naruto growled, but that's 9 months away. By now Tsunade had wrestled his hands free of her face and her scowl could be seen as bright as day. Well, maybe you should have thought against knocking me up, she said, crossing her arms over her large breast. Naruto smirked at the blonde. I knocked you up because I love you. And I can't wait for you to have your baby, he said, smiling. Naruto didn't get a response, other than Tsunade smothering him in her bosom, with light tears rolling down her face. Hormones. Naruto droned in his mind. The AIM orphan's sweat dropped at the scene. I hope she's not like this all the time, Yahiko whispered, in case she could hear them. I don't know, Ka-chan wasn't that moody when we left the hotel. Conan said, watching as Tsunade released Naruto, lest he end up dead from lack of oxygen. Ka-chan, when did that happen? Yahiko asked, as he was always the brash one. Well, yeah, I consider Tsunade-sama my new mother. Don't you feel the same towards Naruto-sensei? He's like our new father. Conan questioned as she absently caressed her origami flower in her hair. I know I do. Even though he's already my cousin, I can already feel a bond forming between us. Nagato kind of meekly. Well, I don't want to be related to an idiot, Yahiko said, obviously doubting his true feelings. What? Naruto yelled from across the room. He stomped towards the youngsters, cracking his knuckles. Ooh, I can't wait until we get to the village, he mused evilly as 2 shadow clones appeared to take the clothes to the front to be paid for. Naruto's features softened as he looked at Conan. You already have what you want, right, Conan-chan? Naruto asked. Conan nodded her head with a smile on her face. Hi to sensei, she chirped happily. Naruto smiled and tousled her hair a little, being mindful of the paper flower in her hair. Good, he said, standing to his full height. After we return to the hotel and you 3 get dressed, we'll continue towards Konoha, he said, turning and grabbing Tsunade's hand and walking out of the store with the clones carrying the bags. What just happened? Why was the idiot so nice to you, when he was mean to me and Nagato? Yahiko asked as they trailed behind the adults, keeping his voice at a whisper. Whoa, speak for yourself. He's only being mean to you, because you keep calling him an idiot, Nagato said with an equal whisper. Yeah, maybe if you stop calling him an idiot then he'll lighten up on you, Conan said as she lightly flicked Yahiko in the forehead. Yahiko held his forehead in indignation and slightly glared at Conan. What you do that for? She giggled at his mad face and smiled. Because you deserve it, she said as they finally arrived at the hotel. Naruto smiled as he had heard everything the kids were saying. The pleasures of chakra. All right, you 3, go get dressed and I'll have a clone get lunch ready. Yahiko and Nagato immediately grabbed their respective bag from the clone and ran into the room. Conan walked in front of Tsunade and smiled. Tsunade returned the smile and unsealed her scroll. Out from the scroll was 5 large bags of clothes. I really shouldn't be surprised, but damn, that's a lot of clothes, Naruto said with wide eyes. Tsunade giggled. You know I love to shop, whenever I can, she said, rubbing her head, just like Naruto would always do. Naruto rolled his eyes and watched as Conan gathered an outfit and walked into the other bedroom. He nodded at the clone that had yet to dispel and it began the making of lunch, grumbling about lazy bosses. So what are you going to do, when we get to the village? If you're serious like I know you are about this marriage, then being an Anbu captain isn't a good idea, Tsunade said as she and Naruto cuddled on a couch. If you know that, then it's pretty obvious what I'm going to do," Naruto said before receiving a small and yet painful hit to his chest. "OWW. No super hits," he chastised the blonde. Tsunade smirked. "Oh, you'll know if the punch is super," she said, snickering and lightly pinching his chest. Naruto rolled his eyes again and leaned his head against her own head, which resided on part of his chest. "But yeah, when we get to Konoha, it's straight to Nissan to tell him I resign from the Anbu Corps. It's been 5 years anyway, a year past a full term," he said, slowly playing with one of her ponytails. "Speaking of your brother, do you think he's going to finally fund the training of field medics to be a part of every squad?" she asked, slightly raising her head to look into his eyes. Naruto smiled. "Definitely, now that the war is over he can focus on that. I'm sure Tsukumo or Orochimaru has already told him the news." XXX in Konoha XXX. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his desk. He had grown a lot older, now nearing his 40s. He had also grown in strength and respect. Thanks to Tsukumo, he now knew the war was over. The civilians and ninja were already in the streets celebrating their victory, the second time the Leaf Village has escaped destruction by their enemies. This war did gain a couple of things, like with the surrender of Suna, they had agreed to sign an alliance treaty with their previous enemies. The treaty was faced with animosity on both sides of the signing. Like the honored siblings, mostly Chiyo had a deep resentment towards both Tsunade, for the countless times she found cures for her poison. And most of all Tsukumo, the White Fang of Konoha, had killed her parents. Ebizo didn't have any resentment, because he knew it was part of war. Hiruzen sighed as he thought of the people who were responsible for the outcome. Naruto and Tsukumo, those two really put themselves in all kinds of danger to destroy their enemies. Kai helped also, but she wasn't much of a heavy fighter like her teammates. She's more into illusionary techniques and sensing enemies. Hiruzen thought about Tsukumo's wife. He had married them as soon as they were 17. Those two, Kai and Tsukumo, loved each other deeply and married despite a war being active. They tried to convince Naruto to marry Tsunade, but he was stubborn about Tsunade being further targeted because of her status and all that noise. Thinking about Tsunade made him think about the rest of his team and their contribution to the war. Orochimaru was ruthless and calm as ever, always striving to overachieve whenever it was possible. Jiraiya was both idiotic and heroic in rescuing many platoons of shinobi with his large arsenal of techniques. And back to Tsunade, who he felt was also the reason they won the war. If it was not for her, many counteractions against Chiyo's poison, Konoha would have suffered far more losses in this war. It was too bad she and Naruto haven't wed yet. Thinking about Tsunade made him think about his own love life. His wife, Bawako, had gave birth to a healthy son. His son's name was Kensai Sarutobi, named after Bawako's father. He was already showing himself to be a competent shinobi at his age of 10. He and his wife had been married for about 13 years. It was because of her that he embodied the will of fire so fervently. He and Naruto, his little adoptive brother, turned dangerous man. The will of fire was literally blazing with them both. Hiruzen heard a knock at his door and sighed. "I guess break time is over," he thought as he signaled for the person to enter with the word, "Enter." The person turned out to be his secretary. "Sir, you have a Danzo here," the redhead said. What could Danzo want? Hiruzen thought curiously. "Yeah, sure, bring him in." No sooner did he say that, the man in question walked in from behind the secretary. He had bandages around his head, covering his right eye, and his right sleeve was tied neatly to prevent it from hanging loosely. He still wore a Junin outfit and he didn't seem to get weaker, due to his missing appendage. He held his left hand up, signaling for his two subordinates to leave him to his privacy with the Hokage. They nodded and vanished. The professor raised his eyebrows. "Was that your personal route you've been working on these past 5 years?" he asked, interlacing his fingers and having them overlapping his mouth. Danzo nodded. "Hi, they were a little difficult to train, due to the fact that my regime is brutal. But it panned out all right, with a little side effects." He muttered the last part, but it was still heard by the Hokage. "Side effects? What kind of side effects?" Hiruzen questioned, narrowing his eyes at his advisor. Danzo ignored the look and gazed to where he knew one of the hidden Anbu were, well hiding. "Well, as you know, your Anbu, handle dangerous missions that have reached your attention. They are strong and loyal to you, and most importantly they retain their emotions for when they're off duty," he began explaining. The War Hawk's eyes quickly glanced at Hiruzen. "Well, my route are pretty much the same with some rather minor tweaks." "What kind of tweaks are you speaking of?" The Fire Shadow asked rather curiously, since his knowledge of the group was rather scarce. "Well, like your Anbu, they handle dangerous missions, except these missions don't ever reach the light of day. Meaning that we protect the root of the great tree of Konoha from the shadows." He stopped and broke eye contact with the Hokage. "They are also only loyal to me," he added, waiting for the outburst, but it never came. "So you're telling me that you have a group of individuals that go on even more dangerous missions than my own Anbu," he deducted, letting the information settle in his mind. "How do they feel about that?" he finally asked. "Not a damn thing," he said, making Hiruzen's eyes widen. It seems sometime during their training, their minds broke completely. They're completely emotionless, they don't feel a thing. Their prime objective is the mission. It's amazing how much success they've had in the field," he said, crazily grinning wide. Sarutobi stood to his feet, from behind his desk. "Danzo, that's inhuman. You've took the emotions from human beings to complete your own gains." "No, not my gains. The village's. You know that I love the village and want to protect it more than I want to protect anything else. Root does just that. You are the leaves that bathe in the sun, while I am the roots that grow in the dark." Sarutobi glared at Danzo for a while. He knew that Root has been busy, and from the vague understanding, the missions they went on were the dirtiest of the dirty missions shinobi could go on. But he couldn't deny that they were essential for their prowess in the stealth game. He then walked towards the window and looked over his village. Seeing all the smiling faces made him smile, before he imagined them emotionless with a sword in hand. He closed his eyes tight. "I'm sorry, Danzo, but I'm going to have to disband your project." This angered Danzo. "What? Did you not hear what I've just told you?" "I've heard every single word. And don't get me wrong, during a war they are outstanding and highly appreciated. Then why are you? But that's just it, the war is over. They are no longer needed. We have entered the era of peace and Root is chaotic." "Dismissed," he said, waving his hand at the man. "But Hokage," Danzo tried to question, only to have a force of ki dropped on him. "I said dismissed," he ordered, keeping an eye on Danzo's reflection. Danzo's eyes narrowed and darkened. He gave a short bow and glared at Sarutobi's back. "You're a fool, Hiruzen. Peace in a shinobi world will not last forever," he said as he turned and left the office. "I have a bad feeling about the future," Hiruzen mused. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Danzo walked out of the large red building and was soon joined by his two agents. "I take it by your emotionless face that the Hokage didn't take it well," the male agent on his left said as the trio soon took to the rooftops. Danzo kept his gaze ahead. "It could have been worse." "How so, Danzo-sama?" the female on the right asked. "I could have went into detail about how you lost your emotions," Danzo said. Though the two didn't have any emotions, they couldn't help but shiver at the thought of the training they went through. Having to kill the person they thought of as a sibling just to survive was horrible. The amount of mental conditioning they each went through after was just as horrible, and the final fight against Danzo himself always put each of them in the ward. Danzo would absolutely admit that medical ninjutsu was a great asset to have, and had to applaud Suand on her ingenious amount of knowledge on the subject. Her and the other two were a strong team, slightly trailing behind Naruto and his own team. One of his agents had just returned from the battlefield, telling him that Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya were crowned the Densetsu no Sannin by Hanzo of the Salamander, just before the Fudogo no Jin Okami came and finished the job. More importantly, Naruto laid waste to the man. Naruto, the Senso no Kami, god of war, or Shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi. Whatever he wanted to be called, was truly a force of nature, just like his namesake, Maelstrom. Even without that bloodline of his, he was considered an S-rank ninja, and he knew that Hiruzen was even considering stepping down to have Naruto take the throne, so to speak, next. "Are you really going to let the Hokage disband what you've worked so hard on?" the male agent said, knocking Danzo from his thoughts. The War Hawk scoffed. "Quite the opposite. I now know that giving Sarutobi that update was a bad idea," so we're going to have to do some relocating. It's time for us to really go underground, he said emotionlessly. XXX with Naruto XXX. Naruto and Tsunade were walking with the AIM orphans, now dubbed their unofficial children, who were positioned in front of them. Yahiko, the official leader of the three, wore a dark red shirt and a pair of black shorts, with a pair of black sandals. Nagato wore a pair of black pants and a similar dark red shirt. He also wore a pair of black sandals. Konan wore a white blouse, similar to Tsunade's own white blouse, and a pair of black pants. Ultimately they looked like a team, all they needed was shinobi gear and the skills to go with them. Naruto-kun, did we leave anything at the hotel? Tsunade asked from her place beside the silver-haired man. Naruto raised his eyebrow at the weird question. No Tsu-hime, I have everything sealed up, he said, taking the scroll out of his pouch for proof. Why such an odd question? He asked the blonde female curiously. She shrugged. No reason, she said. Naruto gazed at her for a while. You're bored, huh? He came to the conclusion, causing her to nod at her head. Me too, he said, hanging his head solemnly. Maybe if we were already in the village then, we wouldn't be bored anymore. Tsunade analyzed, because then they would have things to do, except walk slowly to their destination. Yeah, and then I would be able to train those three, he said, chuckling as he rubbed the back of his head. Not to mention, they can go to the academy. With my father. He thought, knowing that Minato was found, just like he was. And was now in the academy learning the basics. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. They could learn their basics, while we teach them more advanced things. They going to be the strongest group ever to come out of the academy, since, well, us. Tsunade said, lightly bouncing, causing her bust to jiggling within Naruto's sight. Naruto grinned, hypnotized by the cleavage. Yes, to the academy. He droned before shaking his head. Yeah, we better hurry up. Going this pace is starting to get to me, he said, making seal less clones before they snatched up the surprised children and they took to the trees. With this new speed, we shall be in the village within the hour, Naruto said as trees literally blurred by them. XXX an hour later XXX. Naruto laughed as Yahiko continued to curse him for just snatching him up like that. Calm down, Hiko-chan, Naruto said between chuckles. No, that was just mean. I was unprepared and I got a little sick, the orange-haired child said, his face red with anger. Naruto stopped laughing and frowned. I'm sorry, Yahiko-kun, maybe I set the speed a little too fast. Can you forgive me? He asked, crouching down to his level and laying a hand on his shoulder. The other three waited with bated breath, hoping that Yahiko would accept his apology. They weren't disappointed when Yahiko suddenly wrapped Naruto in a hug. Apology accepted, Chu-san. The Uzumaki stopped frowning and smiled softly and returned the hug. He had to remember that Yahiko was without a family for a long time and it was his job to fill in that void. Naruto released the hug and kept his hand on Yahiko's shoulder as they walked closer to the village. Ah, Naruto-san, Tsunade-san, welcome back to the village, one of the Chunin gate guards said, bowing. How's it going, Riko-san? Still a Chunin gate guard, I see, Naruto said, waving at the female Chunin. Hi, it's a relaxing job and I don't feel like advancing a rank, Riko said, slightly blushing. She was always blushing, everywhere she went. Oh, and who's the cute little munchkins? She said, noticing the three kids behind both Naruto and Tsunade. Tsunade chose this moment to enter the conversation. These three are going to be our children, as soon as we get to the Hokage. The red-head one is Nagato-kun, the brunette is Konan-chan, and the orange-haired one is Yahiko-kun. Thankfully Nagato's hair was covering his eyes and Riko couldn't see the Rinnegan on full blast like it always was. Come on, you three, say hi to the nice lady, Naruto said softly, scooting Yahiko and Konan forward, while Tsunade did the same with Nagato. Hello, Riko-san, they said in unison. Naruto-sensei, can we go now? Yahiko asked, pulling on Naruto's pants leg as he futilely tried to drag Naruto towards the Hokage building. Naruto chuckled. All right, Riko-san, I'll be going now. I still think you should take your Jonin exams, he said, finally letting Yahiko drag him away. As soon as they were away from the gate, they noticed that people were out and about, celebrating the victory of winning the war. Wow, people are really letting loose. Tsunade commented, seeing all the sake in the hands of adults while kids ran through the streets. Yeah, it's great that they're enjoying themselves. Naruto said as people began cheering him, knowing he was a big reason they were victorious. Hurry, Yahiko said, dragging him harder. Naruto and the others chuckled, and after 5 minutes they were entering the large red building. Naruto waved to the many passing secretaries and soon they appeared at the large door with the leader of the village behind it. Now I want you three to be on your best behavior, he said, only looking at Yahiko, who looked sheepish at being singled out. Hi Ni-sama, Naruto said, busting through the door, completely contradicting what he just told the kids. Hiruzen sighed, slowly shaking his head. While it was normal for Naruto to call him Ni-sama and bust through the door, it was starting to get frustrating. Hello, to you too Naruto Otuto, Hiruzen said, cracking open an eye. I see you brought more than Hanzo home with you, he said, already knowing that the silver-haired captain would bring the previous leader of AIM's body to be analyzed and all that good stuff. Naruto nodded, taking out said scroll and throwing it at a random corner, only for it to disappear. And Anbu already transporting it to the place that do the dissections and the experiments and all that good stuff. Hi Ni-sama. These three followed us, shortly after defeating Hanzo. I think you'll be surprised that all of them are special, he said, smiling. Hiruzen had the feeling that this was going to be a surprising meeting. Enlighten me Naruto-kun, how special could they be? Naruto smiled. Well, this one, he said, indicating Yahiko. I don't really know yet, but I know he's pretty smart for his age, he said, lightly tapping on his head. He moved over to Konan. This one has a very special bloodline that allows her to control paper. She might even be able to turn into a flock of paper when she gets stronger, he said, knowing that much, since Jiraiya told him when they were training for those 3 years. Finally Naruto moved to Nagato. This one is the most surprising Ni-sama. Not only is he my cousin, he said, watching Hiruzen's eyes widen, since that meant that the little boy was an Uzumaki and the only Uzumakis left after the destruction of their village were Mito, who was very old, Naruto, Kushina, who came to become the next Jinchuriki and was currently in the academy, and now this little boy. Before he could even ask how he knew this, Naruto moved the strands of hair away from his eyes, but he also has the Rinnegan, he said, finally letting the Hokage's head drop on his desk, completely out of it. Tsunade giggled, he took that well. And that's not even all the news I have to tell him. Naruto commented, chuckling also. XXX, an hour later XXX. After recovering and learning the other information Naruto had to offer, Hiruzen mulled over the information given. So you're telling me that you want these three to be your children and students? You want to resign from the Corps and return to being an elite jonin and a sensei at that? You're finally going to marry Tsunade because she's now pregnant. Did I leave anything out? Hiruzen said, leaning against his hand. The spiky-haired jonin rubbed his chin in thought. Yeah, you forgot the part where my team becomes stronger than your own. Naruto said, smirking proudly. Naruto's smirk became a grimace as he was poked in the side. He turned his head to see Tsunade whistling innocently. You better be careful, Ototo. I've trained my students to near perfection. They've even went up against Hanzo the salamander himself. And I killed him myself. True, only after my team wore him out. My ass, they did. Naruto scoffed before getting poked again. Ouch, Tsunade-chan, that hurts. Naruto groaned. Stop arguing with sensei, she chided. Naruto glared at Hiruzen's smirk. This isn't over, Ni-sama. You might have trained your team to near perfection, but my team is going to be absolute, he said, leaving the room. The three new, official, members of Naruto's family sensed the tension in the room leave with Naruto and decided to leave with him. Tsunade watched her children leave and sighed. Did you really have to do all that, sensei? The blonde said, resting her hands on her hips. Hiruzen smiled. You already know I had to. I did the same with you three. I told you three what you couldn't accomplish and sat back and watched you accomplish everything. Naruto's going to do the same to his team. Tsunade frowned, knowing how insanely brutal her sensei's training was. She mentally shuddered at having to think about it. And if she knew her Naruto-kun, his training was even more brutal. Who knew a Nara could be so vicious? Tsunade thought about the infamous man who trained Naruto, Tsukumo and Kai. His name was Shinzu Nara, Like all Naras, he was both incredibly smart and equally lazy. But unlike other Naras, he was easily motivated. His ambition to put his team through hell was easily accomplished. She was glad they returned from that hell. She was interrupted from her thoughts when the door opened. She smiled when one of the subjects of her thoughts walked through. Tsunade-chan, I didn't know you were back. One Hitaki Kai said, closing the distance between them and hugging her. She was a very beautiful woman. She had long and beautiful snow-white hair that reached her back, but was currently in a single ponytail. Exotic crystal blue eyes and plump lips covered in blue lipstick. She wore a dark blue dress that went to the middle of thighs. Over her shoulders was a white jacket. Her dress was slit both down the side of her left leg and also down her chest. She had a large C-cup bust and another bump, signifying her pregnant status. To finish it off, she had on a pair of regular sandals, because she was pregnant. Oh wow, you look amazing, Kai-chan, I didn't know you were pregnant. She said, hugging her again. What's the occasion? She asked, this time indicating the clothes. Nothing really. Me and Tsukumo Koi are just out enjoying each other's company. Kai said. Tsunade rose her eyebrow. Really? Then what are you doing here? Kai smiled widely. We sensed Naruto's return long ago. Being a sensor, I'm able to judge someone's chakra, and I can tell that Naruto's usual calm chakra was all over the place in happiness. Tsukumo was able to prevent me from coming to see what caused it for only an hour. Well, here I am. Now tell me the good news, she said, smiling and preventing herself from using her skills to find out what, since it'll ruin the surprise. Tsunade giggled a little and lightly scratched the back of her head. Well, XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Wow, Naruto, I leave you alone for a couple of days and you already have 3 kids with one on the way. Tsukumo said, shaking his head. He was only wearing a dark blue button shirt and white pants and white sandals, while his wife had his white jacket. His short white hair was kind of presentable. It was still spiky and shaggy at the same time. The ponytail in the back was slightly cut shorter and neatly tied. Naruto chuckled while rubbing the back of his head. His official children snickered in their seats by the 2 adults. What can I say? A lot of things happened after you left. I can tell. So this is your team, he said, looking at the kids. Naruto smiled and looked at the children. Yeah, I'm going to torture the hell out of them, he whispered. Naruto and Tsukumo smiled when they heard a yell of happiness. I guess Kai-chan found out about my pregnant wife-to-be, Naruto said, chuckling. Yeah, it's surprising that she just ignored these 3 here, Tsukumo said, slightly disappointed. Naruto nodded. She must have only been focused on me and Tsunade. That and these 3 are still new to the village. Just when Naruto said that, Kai came out of nowhere and wrapped her arms around the Uzumaki, being mindful of the large belly. Congratulations, Naruto ni, Kai squealed, putting all the hugging power she could. Naruto chuckled. Arigato, Kai Onichan, Naruto said, returning the hug. Feeling her large stomach, Naruto chuckled. Wow, you're really blowing up, Onichan, he said, releasing the hug. He then rubbed the large stomach. How far along are you now? 5 months, she said happily, now joining in the rubbing. I can't wait until I have this baby so I can get into my sexier dresses for Saku-kun. So when are you going to have your wedding? The snow-haired woman asked. It's going to be maybe a week away, Tsunade said, walking down the stairs. Kai let out a small gasp. Why so far away? She said, looking at Naruto. We have to get the children settled into the house. Also, we have to show them around the village and get them familiar with it. Naruto listed off some reason, to which Kai only heard one word. Children. You already have children, she said, causing Naruto to smile and point at the 3 who were whispering to each other. Ah, they're so adorable, she squealed and quickly appeared in front of them, comically hugging all 3. After a few minutes of just seeing Kai smother the former orphans, Tsunade stopped it with a clearing of her throat. Kai blushed in embarrassment and backed up a little. What are your names, little darlings? She asked, still quite bubbly. Konan Uzumaki, the brunette said, giggling at the older woman. Yahiko Uzumaki, the orange-haired child said plainly. Nagato Uzumaki. Nagato smiled, being the only one who didn't have his name changed. Oh, they're so adorable, Kai said again. So I guess the redhead here is a true Uzumaki, she said, indicating his ripple-patterned eyes. Yay, that's my cousin. Naruto sighed, having to explain that for about the second, maybe third time since they united. Yes, Kai-hime, that's his cousin. Now they have a lot to do, so can we get back to our date? Tsukumo grumbled, crossing his arms. Kai stood to her full height. Fine, Tsukumo-kun. She pouted, also crossing her arms. Until next time, Naruto-kun. Tsunade-chan, adorable kids, she said, walking to Tsukumo and letting him lead her out of the building. Naruto watched his genin team walk out of the building. Well, now it's time to show these three their new home. Tsunade nodded and gestured for the kids to follow them. With that, Naruto and company began their journey to the clan district of the village. It took them little over 20 minutes to get there, because they toured the former orphans on the way. The orphans were surprised to see such a regular house. Sure, it was big, but compared to the Hyuga mansion across the way, it was tame. It was a large 2-story building that had some cherry blossom trees framing the walkway. A large lake was in the back, next door to a separate training room. From what they can tell, just from looking from the outside, it had to have at least 6 bedrooms. How many bathrooms was unknown due to the fact that they only seen 6 windows from the front of the house. Wow, they exclaimed, still quite amazed from the realization that they were going to be living there. Get comfortable, you three, because after the wedding you're going to miss it, he said, smirking, ignoring Tsunade's poke at his ribs. The three rolled their eyes, but knowing that he wasn't playing. Stop scaring them, Naruto-kun, Tsunade chastised. Naruto scoffed, scared? They don't look scared at all. Whatever, show them around the place, I need to go somewhere. Naruto said, resting his hand on Nagato's head. Where are you going and why do you need to take Nagato with you? She curiously asked. I'm taking Nagato to see Ba-chan. She's still the head of the Uzumaki. Naruto said, leaning in to kiss Tsunade. She slightly moaned. Hurry back and say hi to Grandma for me, the blonde said, smiling as the Uzumakis vanished in a body flicker. Yahiko and Konan looked at Tsunade in slight concern. What's going to happen to Nagato-kun? Konan asked. Tsunade sounded, barely hearing what Konan asked as she was still immersed in the feeling of kissing Naruto. Oh yeah, Nagato is going to be fine. You have nothing to worry about, Konan-chan. Now let's get you two settled, Tsunade said, leading them into the house. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto appeared deep in the residential district of the village. A few children were still out playing, before the sun completely disappeared. Mothers sat in chairs, already tired from their short celebration of winning the war. So you said this, Ba-chan, person was still the head of the clan. How come you haven't took over? Nagato asked. We actually had that conversation after we finished fighting, Naruto said, looking down at the young redhead. You fought the clan head. What, are you crazy? Nagato said, knowing that Naruto was obviously crazy. I'm not crazy, but man, was that a good fight. It happened about a decade ago. I fought 2 Uzumaki women in the span of 24 hours. He thought as he began thinking about the fight. XXX flashback, a decade ago. XXX. The 12-year-old Naruto walked through the forest, accompanied by Mito Uzumaki, who was around her late 50s and still looking like she 30. Her long dark red hair freely cascaded down her back and all accessories were put away, as they would only get in the way. Are you ready for the fight of your life? The Uzumaki clan head spoke, dressed in a simple and yet elegant dark blue battle suit. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Naruto spoke, still wearing the same attire he wore while fighting his mother, which he just finished not even a day ago. It's time to see just what the hell the Kyuubi wants, he thought. Good, because I have a few conditions for the fight, she said as they entered a fairly large clearing, also inhabited by a large lake. Naruto clenched his fist a couple of times. Tell him, he simply said, moving across the clearing. I want to see how you fight without the Rinnegan. We must remember that these eyes are just a tool for us to use. We mustn't get dependent on them, Mito said, temporarily activating her Rinnegan only to deactivate them just as quickly. Trust me, Ba-chan, I know that, he said. HMPH. She grunted as crimson chakra began oozing out of her body. Naruto stood in shock as the kitsune's cloak wrapped around Mito's body. He knew how it felt to have it wrap around him, but experiencing the pure malice and hate wash over his body was a new experience for him. So this is what everybody's been feeling every time I used the fox's cloak. Naruto thought as he felt the pure killer intent crashed down on him. Shit, this is too much. He cursed in his mind. Only one. He didn't have time to figure out how to counteract the feeling, because soon, Mito appeared in front of him and punched him hard. His small body flew across the clearing and literally skipped across the water. Fuck, what the hell? Fucking Kyuubi. The silvery-haired preteen reached for the bank of the lake and lifted his body out of the water. He rested on his back and looked in the sky. He noticed a spot in the sky that seemed to be getting closer. He cursed again as it quickly dropped on his position, making a large water-filled crater. The preteen panted quickly. He barely had time to substitute out of there. Damn, was I this fast when I was using the Kyuubi's cloak? Naruto thought. Only one. Naruto growled in annoyance as the Kyuubi's voice popped up again. That damn fox is fucking up my concentration, he thought, shaking his head. Unknown to Naruto, Kyuubi was also in Mito's head. The main Kyuubi, inside of Mito, was being heard more clearly. Only one Kyuubi. It spoke, pushing more chakra through the, thought of to be completely reinforced, seal. Naruto looked and noticed a fully formed second tail grew from the cloak. He sighed and his fingers lit on fire, a different elemental symbol on each finger. Let's see if this works, he mumbled as he blasted forward. He thrust his palm forward, before his thought process thought of something. Wait a minute, where's her seal at? He thought since her abdomen was in clear view and no seal was there. Fuck. He cursed as he was unable to dodge the punch that rocketed him back towards the lake. This time he skipped across the hard ground and into a very dense oak tree. He coughed up blood as his stomach crashed into the oak. He was starting to get pissed at being a punching bag. He thought of something and created a clone. It was time, but in the meantime he had to keep Mito away from his clone. Lightning began crackling around his body and he felt his entire body become slightly numb with all the lightning around it. He grinned at the woman who was busy grabbing her head and swinging it around as a third tail sprouted. He took notice of the new appendage and upped the electrical output. Raiden no Yoroi, lightning-style armor, the most useful lightning technique ever, he thought as he literally disappeared. He was in front of Mito in a split second and it was her turn to fly through the clearing. And fly she did. Naruto's toe wasn't even on the ground for a millisecond before he gave chase after the flying woman. He was pleased his lightning-cloaked body allowed him to reach her in no time at all, but damn was it taxing on his body. Naruto quickly unclosed his fist together, making a single double-handed fist. He quickly slammed that on Mito's Yukai-cloaked body, sending her straight into the earth. After he did that he quickly backed up and waited for her to emerge. After 3 seconds the ground started shaking and a pillar of demonic energy shot into the sky. That's not good, Naruto thought, as that was sure to bring more attention to their fight. 2 seconds after the pillar of Yuki, Naruto's body was grabbed by an arm of Yuki. The lightning and Yuki were fighting each other for dominance, so Naruto didn't feel anything from being grabbed. He looked down to see 6 tails of pure destruction swaying behind Mito. Her body was crouched and a skeletal structure was above her, acting like some kind of fox bone armor. He cursed and his eyes flashed. Shinra Tensei, he said, forcing the arm off of him. He kept the eyes blazing as he faced off against the 6 tails. Is this what Pain experienced when we fought? Fuck, I have to figure a way to calm her down, Naruto thought as his clone dispelled and he received power of the sage. He smirked as he blasted forward, Mito doing the same. Punches, kicks, grab attempts, and many Shinra Tenseis were used in a span of a few seconds. Until a lucky Rasengan connected with Mito's Yuki-cloaked abdomen. He was immediately blasted backwards. His cloak vanished as did his sage mode. Use it, it's your only chance at survival, use it. Almost immediately a second pillar of Yuki rose to pierce the sky. But it wasn't from Mito, but from Naruto. The, previously thought of to be absorbed Kyuubi, finally emerged from deep within Naruto. Now the silver-haired preteen was also cloaked in a 6-tailed, bone armor state. Now the two Jinchuriki faced each other and met in a clash of power that instantly cratered the area. After that everything went dark for both of them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto's eyes opened to the vision of darkness. It was only after his eyes fully focused that he noticed the pipes. He was in his sewer-detailed mindscape, a place he hasn't been in for years. He noticed he was floating in water and stood up, said water reaching his waist. It's never reached that high before, Naruto thought as he noticed a strong red glow in the distance. Of course he knew that he had to go there. So go he did. As he was going, the glow was getting stronger and the pipes that indicated his silver chakra was getting skinnier. Soon after a couple of twists and turns he stepped into a familiar room that seemed to have gotten larger. He noticed a fox on his left, behind his standard cage, with the familiar seal tag keeping the gate closed. In his process to looking right, he noticed Mito entering from another hallway. Only she was looking to her left, in the process of looking right. Their eyes connected and they proceeded to look to their right. Naruto instantly noticed another Kyuubi no Yoko, except this one was chained in every way imaginable for a fox its size. The chains made it completely immobile except for the 6 tails that moved freely behind him. So the containers finally join minds to visit us, spoke Q from its chained position. I'm going to call Naruto's Kyuubi Yoko, while I call Mito's Kyuubi Q, but remember that Naruto's Kyuubi is caged and Mito's Kyuubi is chained. Naruto turned to face Yoko. What's the meaning of this? I was positive you were absorbed a long time ago, completely purified by the activation of my Rinnegan. You screwed up, Kit. Your seal failed to do its job, Yoko said, ignoring the question. What does it mean? Mito said, walking up to Naruto. So it seems I become soft in the future, Q said. You shut your damn mouth, Yoko said, growling at the other Kyuubi. Future. What does he mean? Mito asked, looking at the caged Kyuubi. Go on, explain to her, mortal. Explain your fuck up, Q said, growling as its tail smashed against the walls and floor behind him. Naruto's mind was going a mile a minute as everything literally flashed before his eyes. Everything soon clicked to realization. Okay, Mito-sama, here's the truth. I'm from the future. The caged Kyuubi is mine, obviously the other is yours. Naruto dropped the bomb. The future. But time travel is impossible, Mito exclaimed, completely skeptic about the situation. Not for the king of fucking up there, Q said. Naruto glared at the chained fox. I'm not a fuck up, I just make mistakes. So you're 12 again, huh? Damn, that must be hell, and with a new everything. What happened to your blonde hair? Yoko asked. Naruto enjoyed the change of subject and nodded. Yeah, except this time I actually had a good childhood, even if it's filled with war. And my hair, Naruto said, grabbing his silver bangs. Yeah, that changed with my chakra, he said, rubbing his long silver hair. I need a haircut, Naruto added with a chuckle. It's good to see you again, Naruto, Yoko said. Yeah, you too, furball, Naruto said, loving his nickname for the fox. Stop ignoring me, Q yelled, slamming his tails harder. The mindscape rumbled with the slamming, before chains sprouted and wrapped around the tails. There, Mito said after binding the fox. Now fully explain everything, she said, glaring at Naruto. With sweat going down his brow, Naruto explained everything, with Yoko adding that during his fight with Madara, his seal was further distorted and became an entirely different seal. Naruto told her about everything from his time, and then he told her about his mother and father and fighting his mother not even 24 hours ago. When I mean he told her everything, I mean everything. From his birth to that very moment. Mito stood there completely shocked. Wow, so Madara survived the fight with Hashirama-kun and went on to completely fuck up the world. Mito deduced. So what do we do about the 2 Kyuubis? You have to fuse us together, Yoko said. Are you crazy? And give you 18 tails of power? Fuck that, Naruto said. No, idiot, you need to take complete control of my chakra and make it your own. And fuse my subconscious with the other. His own chakra will erode and I'll fade within him. That's the solution. That's why I've been telling you that there can be only one, Yoko said, giving Naruto and Mito their solution. Will you really let me do that? Naruto asked, only to see Yoko nod. I promise, and as a kitsune, I'm bound by my word, Yoko said. Arigato Kyuubi, Naruto said as he jumped at the cage and peeled the seal off. Instead of the gates bursting open, like Naruto would have thought, they slowly opened. The Kyuubi stepped out, his tail swinging around as he laid in front of Naruto. Naruto walked up to his snout and laid his hand on it. "Sayonara Kyuubi no Yoko," he said as his body was immediately filled by Kyuubi's chakra. A flash of light blinded the spectators. A red glow overcame Naruto, before it started to dim and turn silver, before that disappeared. The light left and the spectators were surprised to see a spectral image of the Kyuubi at the size of a small fox. "Now throw me at the other Kyuubi," Yoko said, loosing its powerful booming voice. Naruto did as he was told and watched as he lost the person that has been with him his whole life. With that everything shattered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX later, their previous Yuki cloaks gone. It had seemed that all that time spent in their linked mindscapes was equivalent to a second in the real world. I think our fight's over, Mito said from her position on the floor. Yeah, I guess it is, Naruto said as the chakra signatures were only a few seconds away from them. So are you going to tell anybody else your secret? Naruto slowly shook his head. There'll be no reason to, he said, sitting up as nearly all of the Anbu and Jonin arrived at their location, with the Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, at the front. What the hell happened here? He asked in full Hokage mode. Oh, nothing. Naruto waved at him nonchalantly. I just said something I shouldn't have, Naruto said, chuckling nervously. How do you explain the two separate pillars of Yuki? Those were both me, upping the power. I do have complete control of the Kyuubi's power, the Uzumaki clan head said. You do not want to know what was said, trust me, she said, keeping up the act and menacingly glaring at Naruto. Hiruzen stared at the two. Okay, Naruto, you're not off the hook. Maybe your punishment should be changing Kensai's diaper for a month, he mused out loud as everybody left, sensing that they weren't needed, the Hokage included. Aw man, I hate changing Kensai's diaper. I swear if he pees on me one more time. Calm down, Naruto, Mito said, interrupting him. Naruto shook his head. Thanks, Mito-sama. What did I say about calling me Sama? She said, annoyed as she too sat up. But you are the clan head, thus you should have respect. Well, how about you take the title? Nah, too much responsibility. Not to mention having to go to the boring council meetings. Oh, don't get me started on the meetings. I mean, I love Tobirama dearly, rest his soul. But creating a civilian council was the dumbest thing ever. You're from the future, how come you didn't stop him? She said, playfully hitting him. And how was I supposed to do that? Was I supposed to go up to him and just say, oh Tobirama, don't make the civilian council, they fuck up the future? How the hell was I supposed to explain that? Well, we'll never know now, will we? Mito said, standing to her feet. Whatever, I guess it's time for me to go home and deal with Nisama. Bye, Mito-sama. Stop calling me that, Mito said, slapping Naruto in the back of his head. Alright, bye Bachan, Naruto said, substituting himself with a log, just in time, because the log exploded. XXX end flashback XXX. Naruto was thrown from his reminiscing as they arrived at the house. Mito had moved from her house in the forest to the village, to take care of Kushina. Naruto knocked on the door and said, little girl opened the door. Ah, Naruto ni, what are you doing here? Kushina said as Naruto crouched down to hug her. She's been calling him that, ever since he rescued her from the pursuing Iwa ninjas. Sadly, he was too late to save her uncles from certain death in front of her eyes. Naruto knew they were going to destroy Uzushiogakure, but he didn't know exactly when. So when word came that Kushina was being escorted to the village, he cursed, because it must have already happened. He promised her that he would always take care of her, but she was given to Mito to take care of because she was the clan head. Oh, I'm just here to see Bachan. I found another Uzumaki. His name is Nagato, he said, nudging Nagato forward. Ooh, he has the Rinnegan too. How good is he with it? Kushina asked as her blue eyes turned into the Rinnegan. Not very, he just got it and he doesn't know how to deactivate it yet. Naruto said, rubbing Nagato's head. Is that Naruto-kun I hear? A voice said from the back. Yeah, it's me Bachan, Naruto said a little loud. Suddenly the gravity around him tripled and he nearly dropped to his knees. He groaned in annoyance, he had forgotten about that security system. The house had seals everywhere, and when a certain word was mentioned the person would be subjected to extreme gravity. The only reason it hadn't happened before was because he wasn't in the house yet. Soon Mito walked into the living room. "Ah, you've gotten stronger. I'm sure you quickly cancelled your own gravity seals in the nick of time though," she said, snapping her fingers, cancelling the gravity effect. Naruto chuckled. "I can't believe you still remember about the 5-starred gravity seal," he said, resealing the gravity, as all the points returned to being on his wrists, ankles, and his neck. He hid the point on his neck with special makeup. "Maybe it's time to go up to 3. He thought, since he's been at 2 for the longest. He cursed himself for forgetting about his creation up until a couple of weeks ago. She nodded and looked at Nagato. "So he becomes pain. He doesn't look like much," she thought. "Another one, Naruto. This is the second one. You're becoming a little Uzumaki hunter, huh?" Naruto chuckled. "Yeah," he said, but she heard it as, "Don't expect any more." Naruto began rubbing the back of his head. "So shall we talk over tea?" She nodded and walked towards the kitchen. Seals of Forgotten Time Chapter 8. The two Uzumakis sat at a table that was extremely close to the ground. Though it was a noble setting, with the low table and all, they were sitting casually. Naruto sipped his small cup of tea. "So what do you want to talk over? Does it concern our new arrival?" Mito said with a raised eyebrow. The blonde rested his cup on the table and cleared his throat. "Yes and no. I wanted to know how you were doing. Are you feeling all right?" he asked with clear worry in his voice. The elder Uzumaki frowned. "So you noticed, huh?" she said, looking at her feet. "Well, yeah, I noticed. What kind of ninja would I be if I didn't notice somebody was near the end of their lives? There's this sort of ominous feeling when you know somebody's going to kick the bucket," he said, running his fingers through his hair. Mito gave a small smile at his brashness. "Doctors said I only have a week to live after the transfer." "Well, of course you're old. Not everybody can live forever, not even Uzumakis," he said, looking at her wrinkled face and her gray hair. But for such an old woman, it was surprising to see her with a sane state of mind. She still remembered everything, surely her ninja training keeping her brain intact. "True, but I don't care what the doctors say, they never met an Uzumaki. We exceed the expectations of regular shinobi, it's in our blood," she said with a large proud smile. "When the time comes, take care of Kushina. I've taught her all I can about withstanding the fox's evil intentions." The blonde gave a ghost of a smile. They both knew she would pass as soon as the beast was removed from her. He survived because it wasn't removed as much as absorbed. "Do you even have to ask?" he said, rising to his feet. She practically copied his fake smile and activated her Rinnegan. "The child is strong and smart, but shy to the core. Maybe a little time with you can crack her proverbial shell." Naruto cracked a real smile, "Because we all know it worked on you," he said, chuckling, activating his own Rinnegan, and they just stared at each other through their rippled eyes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX So how long have you knew Naruto-sensei? Nagato asked the female. Kushina chuckled. Sensei, so he took you as a student already, she said, walking to the single swing set. Yeah, I know it's weird, but hey, you didn't answer my question, he said, watching her sit down, before he started pushing her. She giggled, loving the way the wind felt when it blew through her hair. I knew him for a year and some months. He's like a brother to me. The only thing he taught me was a single chakra control exercise before he was sent on a mission, she said, jumping off the swing. What was the exercise? Nagato asked, curious. Rock balancing, she nearly yelled with pure excitement. Nagato deadpanned, not fully understanding the importance of such an exercise based on the name. What in Kami is that? Kushina giggled as she ran across the yard to a rock that was about 3 pounds in weight. She jumped on it and leaned forward and did a handstand. The exercise is all about balancing the rock, but only by your chakra. Do you see the gap between the rock and my feet? Nagato peered at the act and nodded his head, amazed because the rock seemed to be floating above her feet. Wow, that's amazing. Maybe me and the others will have to do that, he said, still amazed. You sure will. The two kids heard from their side. The surprise made each of them jump in shock, and it broke Kushina's concentration, and the rock fell on the soles of her feet. "Come on, Nagato, it's time to go home," he said, chuckling at Kushina's pouting face, because he ruined her concentration. "Keep at it, Kushi-chan. When are you going to return for another visit, Aniki?" Kushina asked in innocence. The silver-haired Uzumaki walked to Kushina and rubbed her head. "I'll be stopping by periodically until it's time to transfer the Kyuubi from Ba-chan," he said as an apple collided with the back of his head. The children laughed until he disappeared in a puff of smoke. "And that kid's is a successful substitution," he said as a log fell to the ground covered in apple chunks. "But Aniki, I'm still scared of the demon fox," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Don't worry about that, Kushi-chan. Me and Ba-chan have already devised a seal that will keep it contained, and it will not cause you any problems in the slightest. Of course, if you want to use its power, that's a different story," he said as he thought about the fusion of minds between the two demon foxes. Which one was dominate, and would it be safe to leave it so that they could verbally communicate? Those were the questions floating through Naruto's spiky head. "It's so awesome to have two seal masters working for me," the female redhead sighed into her hug. Two bursts of joyous laughter erupted from two places as Naruto and Mito were laughing their asses off. "I'm not working for you, dear. I'm working with you. I might even be your sensei." "No, wait, I already have a team, so you're going to have to stay in the academy," he said, loving her puffed cheeks. Kushina released herself from the hug and scoffed, "Oh please, I won't be spending another year in that place. Next time the Hokage comes to evaluate the students, I'm going to sign myself up for a try at an early graduation," she said, smiling proudly, because she already knew she was just as strong as any average genin. "Speaking of Hokage, rumors have been floating around the village that you might be part of the race for the hat," Mito said, walking out into the backyard. "Really? Is that true? I might have the Hokage for a sensei," Nagato said, finally joining the conversation. Naruto nervously chuckled. Haha, no, that's not true. It would be the worst time to take the hat, considering I have a family on the way. Not to mention a team to teach. And plus Hiruzen Ni-chan still has plenty of years in him," he said, rubbing the back of his head. Naruto looked at the little 8-year-olds and shook his head. "I'm serious. I'm not going for the hat. Enough of this, I'll see you two later. I have to finally show Nagato the inside of his new home," he said, quickly grabbing Nagato's shoulder and body flickering out of there. XXX 1 month later XXX. Naruto had been steadily putting the three former orphans through some work. It was just reading mostly. Tsunade was starting to have cravings, just regular stuff. She still hasn't shown signs of being pregnant, which she was glad of. She had been shopping for a wedding kimono, before she started getting distorted, her words not Naruto's. He had also heard news of the pregnancy of both Kai and Bawako, and he immediately knew Kakashi and Asuma were coming along. He and Sakumo went out for a couple of drinks with Hiruzen, in which he gave them the dos and don'ts for what to do throughout the pregnancy. 2 words both of them will forever remember are, beware of the mood swings. Tsunade had super strength when she wanted to, so Naruto was going to be in a lot of trouble the next 8 months. Kai, she was much sweeter than Tsunade, so her mood swings were going to be surprising, more or less. She also has been resuming her work as the head of the hospital, working on the dangerous poison derived from Hanzo. It was a tricky poison. Fortunately, she had a lot of time to both copy it and create an antidote. But back to more pressing matters. A scream sounded throughout the village. It fits. Kai and Tsunade were shopping for the perfect wedding kimono for the upcoming wedding. And from the sound of it, they found it. Of course it fits, Su-chan. It was tailored specifically for your body. Kai giggled from her place on the bottom of the platform, wearing a loose pair of beige pants and a loose white shirt. She shirt had to be loose, to fit over her large pregnant belly. Tsunade was wearing a pure white kimono that had sleeves that reached the knuckles on her hands. The length of the kimono also made it like a dress, but the tail behind it was only about a foot long. It was form-fitting, but provided plenty of breathing room for her chest. Her obi was below her bosom and a fairly large bow was tied behind her. On her feet was traditional sandals, that were also white, not that you could see it. Her hair, though not now changed, had to change for the ceremony. Conan said so herself, but what did she know? She was never married. How do you like it, Tsunade-sama? The two heard the tailor say from right beside Tsunade. Tsunade looked at herself in the mirror and resisted the urge to squeal in excitement. It's perfect, she said, sliding her hand along the collar that ran down her chest. Except I feel as if my girls are suffocating, she said as her kimono didn't reveal any cleavage. Tsunade-sama, that would be unwise. You are going to formal wedding, not party. And plus, do you want Naruto-sama's eyes down here or up here? The unnamed tailor asked, pointing in both her chest and her eyes, respectfully. The women giggled like schoolgirls. I guess you're right. Thanks for all your help, Maki-chan. What would I do without you? Probably go to your own wedding stark naked. Kai giggled from the sidelines. The blonde's cheeks flushed pink in embarrassment. I bet Naru-kun would love that, she said, sighing as she started thinking about what Naruto was doing. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Sakumo, someone must really be talking about you. Sakumo said from beside Naruto as they had to stop their spar because Naruto was sneezing and the Uzumaki called a timeout. Dirt marks covered the two fighters because of their spar. I hope they stop soon, because I can't fight and sneeze at the same time. Naruto said, rubbing his nose. Whatever, let's continue. This might be my last spar with you before I have to really focus on the trio at home. Naruto said, quickly pushing Sakumo, causing him to stumble backwards. He then did a series of quick hand seals before he deeply inhaled. Futon. Atsugai, pressure damage. The pressurized wind quickly caught up to Sakumo and barraged the Hitaki with kicked-up rocks and pebbles, and not to mention the trees from which the wind was traveling through. The silver-haired Uzumaki smirked as he knew that was a cheap shot, but he did deserve it for lowering his guard. A crescent wave of white energy flew through the air, making a gorge in the ground as it traveled. Knowing the damage that wave could make, even blocked, the whiskered elite Jonin jumped out of the way of the wave. But in the corner of his eyes, he noticed a figure in the air that brought forth another white wave of chakra. He cursed as it hit him full on and exploded as it hit the ground a millisecond later. Sakumo chuckled as he knew that Naruto was alright. But that doesn't mean he was going to let up on the offensive. So after a few hand seals he let lightning cackle around him. Raiden. Fukushu Ryu, vengeful thunderstorm, he said as he began punching towards the ground, each punch sending a lightning bolt that created an explosion about 5-foot radius, each. The Shirokiba stopped his onslaught as he finally landed inside the 7-meter wide crater. Maybe I overdid it a little, he said, more worried about the landscape than his partner's condition. Naruto groaned from the epicenter of the crater. He was a little numb, and luckily he had used the Rinnegan's special ability to absorb any and all ninjutsu to protect him from the brunt of the attacks. Too bad for what he couldn't absorb, the poor ground. He sat up slowly, partial numbness being a side effect from absorb so much electricity. You still okay to fight, right? Naruto heard from above. Give me a minute. Naruto yelled back, shaking his head. He's not going to give me a minute, he thought as he focused on Sakumo from the corner of his eye. And true enough, he was in the process of getting serious. A cloud of white chakra was surrounding his being. Yup, he's the White Fang all right, Naruto thought as he took a deep breath before he was covered in a cloud of silver chakra. Sakumo grinned as he seen the chakra begin to slowly cover Naruto. He dropped to all fours like any Inuzuka and watched as his chakra formed claws around his hand. His cloak now resembled a white wolf. His transformation complete, he sprung in motion and was quickly upon Naruto, who was only partially transforming. That failed as Naruto's eyes changed color and he quickly pushed his comrade away. Shinra Tensei, almighty push, he yelled and watched as the changed Jonin flew through the air. The silver shroud was now complete and he stood to his feet, loving the feeling of power that this form brought to him. He jumped high into the air and floated for a while. My turn, he mumbled as he grinned widely while he did a single bird seal. Futon. Ikatiru Fu no Kaminoikari, wrath of the angry wind god, he thought as the sky over them darkened and a dozen tornadoes shot down from the sky. This was Naruto's absolute strongest wind technique. It was partially why he was called the god of war. Utter destruction didn't really describe what was happening on the ground, because it didn't really do any justice. It really seemed like Mother Nature was pissed and was using her power over the wind to lay waste to absolutely everything. The white wolf below had no defense against the force of nature. The only thing he could do was wait while his body went from one tornado to another at unimaginable speeds. Naruto's eyes dimmed a little and he cancelled his technique before it could cause any more damage. He looked down in surprise, not knowing how he lost control the way he did. Maybe it was because Tsukumo had rained down electric hell upon him not a moment ago. Luckily he had held back a bit and didn't include the millions of tiny wind blades that made up each of the different tornadoes. If we would have continued this fight, one of us will have gotten killed in the process. Naruto thought as he dropped to the devastated ground. Groaning was heard a short distance from where Naruto landed. Ugh! Too far, Baka. The muffled words came from a cluster of large broken trees, before said cluster exploded outward, bombarding Naruto with wooden chunks. What possessed you to use the strongest wind technique in your arsenal? Tsukumo said with a pissed-off look as his white cloak dissipated. Naruto relinquished his control over his own cloak and rubbed the back of his head and chuckled nervously. No idea whatsoever, he said, ducking from a piece of thrown wood. He nearly yelled as his voice died quickly. All around them were angered shinobi of ages, ranks, and gender, but the most terrifying were the faces of Tsunade and Kai. Tsunade already out of her wedding kimono and now in a regular white shirt and red pants. Look, it's clearly Naruto's fault why the place looks the way it does. Tsukumo immediately ratted Naruto out. What, you're the one the one, Naruto trailed off, thinking of an excuse to use against Tsukumo's. Meanwhile the females were slowly getting closer and closer. Wait, I know, you're the one that went all White Fang on me, he said, crossing his arms in triumph. Tsukumo gave him a deadpan look that immediately told him that using the strongest move doesn't excuse him from most of the blame. Unfortunately or fortunately, they were each snatched up by their ears by their respective wife or wife-to-be. The females were yelling at their men to quit ruining evenings for them and a lot of stuff that I don't think you want to know. Wow, two legendary shinobi like them getting dragged by their ears, by girls no less. I thought I'd never see the day. One of the male spectators commented on the spectacle. What are you saying, that kunoichi aren't stronger than men? The ladies around the men said, cracking their knuckles while flames shot up around them. All the lone man could do was gulp in fear and pray to Kami they didn't go below the belt. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX material. Mostly just titles like, Understanding Chakra, Your Body and Your Element, and Strengthening Your Tenketsu. Naruto told each of them from the beginning that under his tutelage things were going to be strict. They agreed and he was proud of it, but then he told them to read a basic book and completely memorize it. Wow, this is harder than I thought, Yahiko said, flipping a page in his book, which was about getting in tune with your affinity. It seems like every time I learn something new, I forget something old, he said, not able to keep the frustration out of his voice. Conan flipped another page as well. I wish you wouldn't complain. It's really unnecessary. Yahiko childishly stuck his tongue out at the blue net, which she returned. What about you, Nagato? You're quiet as usual, Yahiko commented on his friend's silence. No response from the redhead prompted Conan to look on as well. Is he asleep? She asked, not being able to see if his eyes were closed because of his long bangs. Yahiko put his book down and crawled toward Nagato. Either he's really into that book or he taught himself to sleep with his eyes open, he said, noticing his eyes were still open. I don't hear any snoring, he added. Me and you both know that Nagato-kun doesn't snore, Conan said, also putting her book down and crawling next to the orange-haired child. Good point, Yahiko said, watching Conan lift Nagato's bangs up to get a clear look. What are you two doing? Someone asked, causing the three children to jump in surprise. Naruto and Tsunade were behind them after just entering the house. Naruto-sensei, what are you doing here? They asked in unison. The whiskered Jonin chuckled. I live here. Now answer my question, what were you two doing? He asked, sitting on the couch. Yahiko stammered, trying to find an answer. Fortunately Conan didn't have that problem. We thought Nagato was asleep while reading his book, she said, pointing at the culprit in question. Is that true, Nagato? Tsunade asked from her place on Naruto's lap, no longer angry at Naruto. The now conscious Uzumaki denied their claims. No, that's not true at all. I would never sleep while studying. What? That's a lie. You were sleeping with your eyes open. Yahiko said, now pointing at Nagato in anger. I don't even know how to do that, baka. Nagato said back. Whoa, tempers are flaring over here. Naruto mumbled in Tsunade's ear. I know, right? They're usually peaceful kids too. She mumbled back. I think it's obvious what Nagato was doing. Naruto said, stopping the arguing between the children. Nagato, were you meditating? He asked, noticing the book on the floor in front of him, Controlling Your Chakra. The young Uzumaki nodded and picked up the book. Yes, Naruto-sensei. The book said the best and simplest way to gain a foothold over your chakra was meditation. So I tried, and well, you know the story, he said, lowering his head. Naruto grinned. Why are you sad? That's a good thing. I'm glad you're taking the initiative to learning how to control your chakra. After all, you're just wasting chakra with your Rinnegan constantly active, he said, imagining he was patting the younger Uzumaki's head, since he was currently incapable of doing that. This made Nagato very happy and made the other two pout. After all, you can't go to the academy until you can control that on-off switch. Naruto added, making Yahiko's eyes widen. No, the orange-haired boy yelled as he grabbed Nagato's cheeks and checked his eyes, still seeing the rippled eyes. Don't ever deactivate these eyes. I don't want to go to the academy. Do you hear me? He said, shaking Nagato's head. Naruto, Tsunade, and Konan sighed in unison at seeing the boy's childish ways. Enough, you three have to go to the academy to become genins. It's the rules, you have to follow them. The Hokage is going to evaluate this year's batch in, he trailed off, thinking of the date. The 5th of August, 3 days after Suheim's birthday. He said, hugging the blonde a little harder. Ah, Narukoi, you remembered my birthday. She cooed before she kissed him. The two male children rolled their eyes in annoyance, while Konan thought it was sweet. Get a room, you two, Yahiko said, averting his eyes. The blonde partially parted her lips. Later, she whispered. So if today's the 6th, then we have about a month before evaluations. Nagato said, rising to his feet. Hey, isn't Kushina-chan's birthday on the 10th of this month? Tsunade asked, curious. Naruto nodded. Yeah, it is. Ooh, I know. We should get married on her birthday, it'll be the perfect present. Naruto said before he get thumped in the forehead. Stop being cheap, baka, she said, making Naruto glad she didn't use any super strength. Naruto rubbed his head in slight pain. Fine, but that's still a good day. I can easily have a group of shadow clones set up the ceremony at the top of Hokage Mountain. Sounds good. I already have my kimono ready, the blonde said, getting up, after seeing the time being 4:39 p.m. Do you four want me to make a small lunch and a small dinner, or skip lunch and make a big dinner? She said, walking to the kitchen. The four of them looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. You can make lunch, he said, rising to his feet. Ooh, I hope it's ramen, he added, not being able to stop his mouth from watering. Tsunade sighed. Too much of those noodles are bad for you, but since I love you, I'll make some, just for you, she said, winking at him as she walked into the kitchen. Naruto bent backwards, cracking his back. In the meantime, I'll start teaching you three some of the most important basics. The henge, the kawarimi, and the bunshin. But if I feel you aren't up to the task, I'll postpone the evaluation. You will then be entered into the academy as punishment. Do you accept these conditions I have offered you three? He said, giving them a stern stare. The three of them looked at each other, most likely assuring each other that this was non-negotiable. They nodded and grinned at Naruto. Hi, sensei. Naruto grinned back. Excellent, then let us change the venue to something more appropriate. Follow me to the training ground, he said, walking towards the back door that led to the backyard. Now outside, he looked at each student. Which one do you want to learn first? He asked. The kawarimi, Nagato said immediately, remembering when Naruto did it a month ago. The smile widened on Naruto's whiskered face. Excellent choice, Nagato. The most useful of the basics, no matter how much skill you possess in other areas, he said, quickly substituting himself with a log. Substitution requires you to really understand how your chakra works. I'm sure all of you have read that piece of material, he asked, pleased with the nods he received. Good. Now with this knowledge you will be able to feel the landscape of objects you can use for replacement. The object is usually a log because that's what is in high supply, he said, pointing at his trees. The quick lesson would have continued if Tsunade hadn't yelled from the kitchen window that lunch was ready. "Ah man, this was getting interesting," Yahiko said as his stomach growled. "Then again, he is the boss," he said, laughing as he ran to the house, with the other two in tow. Naruto smiled as the scent of ramen hit his nostrils. Using the power over the wind, he allowed himself to float in the air and let the scent carry him to his destination. This is how he entered the dining area. Naruto-kun, what are you doing?" Suand asked, concerned for Naruto's health. Naruto came to his senses and shook his head. His feet now planted on the floor, he smiled at his fiancée. "Sorry about that," he said, looking at the table to see an assortment of different kinds of sandwiches and a bowl of ramen. She smiled at him, knowing how he loved ramen. "Just sit down and eat," she said before a knock was sounded at the door. "I'll go see who this is," she said, leaving the kitchen. Surprise was etched on her face at seeing her little brother Naoki, Orochimaru and Jiraiya standing there. "Surprise," Naoki and Jiraiya said quickly, hugging her. Of course Naoki was the only one to gain the attention considering how much Tsunade missed him. "Come in you three," she said, not releasing her hug on her brother and shoving Jiraiya away in the process. She sat down on the couch with her brother next to her. Jiraiya sat on the other couch along with Orochimaru. "Hello Tsunade, how are you doing?" Orochimaru asked. "Naruto's not pissing you off, right?" "Hey, I resent that," Naruto said from the kitchen, along with some snickering. "Hello to you too, Naruto," Orochimaru said, chuckling a little. "For your information, Tem, Naruto is the best thing I've ever met," the blonde sannin said, crossing her arms under her bosom, releasing Naoki in the process. "I'm not a thing," Naruto said from the kitchen again. "Shut up, dummy," she said, causing bursts of laughter to erupt from the kitchen. Though they couldn't see him, each of them knew a depressing aura was surrounding Naruto. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya. "What are you doing here, you pervert?" she asked the elemental nation's biggest pervert. Jiraiya puffed his chest out in pride. "Well, after I completed my novel, I began wandering around the nation. Of course home was the final destination, but I made a few detours. Yeah, we found the pervert beaten and broken in the middle of the road, with a horde of females in towels walking away," Orochimaru said, feeling shame for being his teammate. "Weirdly though, he rose without a scratch on him," Naoki said, scratching his head in mystification. "Welcome to the mystery of Jiraiya, the super pervert of Konoha," Tsunade said with a deadpan face, while others laughed. Jiraiya's chest never deflated since it was a self-proclaimed title he gave himself. At that point Naruto walked out of the kitchen, patting his stomach with a toothpick in his mouth. "That was delicious," he said while the former orphans walked out, absent the silly gestures. "What's up, pervert, snake eyes, shorty?" he said, greeting them respectively. "What brings you two to our humble abode? It was just a reunion of teammates. What, can't we do that now?" Orochimaru said with an obviously fake sneer. "Yeah, what's wrong with you? My sensei can't see his teammate." Naoki playfully joined in. Naruto stepped back in false dejection. "Oh, you two wound me with your words," he said softly, gripping his chest, right on his heart. The audience chuckled at the comedy. It always seemed that nothing could ever hurt the whiskered Jonin. "So Naruto, it's true that you're out of the Anbu now. What made you leave?" Jiraiya said, with Orochimaru nodding in agreement, as he had never asked the question. "Her," Naruto plainly said, pointing his thumb at the blonde woman. Everybody face planted at the one-worded answer, causing Naruto to chuckle nervously as Tsunade playfully or not so playfully cracked her knuckles. "You got 5 seconds to reword that." Okay. What I meant to say was that with the war finally over, I felt that it was safe to settle down and have a family." "Do you really think I can do that in the Anbu?" he explained. The two adult males nodded, pleased with the answer. "It's impossible to settle down while in the Anbu. You made a wise choice, Naruto," the pale snake user said. "No duh," he said, crossing his arms. "So considering you have 3 little extras, it's safe to say you're serious about training them." Jiraiya didn't ask, rather he was merely stating the obvious. Not letting Naruto answer, Yahiko spoke up. "Yeah, He's preparing us for the Hokage evaluations next month, the orange-haired scamp said with a rather anxious tone. Who invited you to the conversation, Squirt? Naruto asked, thumping Yahiko in the ear. Hey, you can't call me Squirt, I'm only 8. Yahiko countered with an angry face. Exactly, now you three head up to the study and read the scroll about the Kawarimi. I didn't get into the instructions earlier because of lunch, he said, watching them sprint upstairs. Those kids are so anxious to learn, Naruto said, sighing. Remind you of anyone? Orochimaru said, glancing at his young student. Yeah, it actually reminds me of all of us. We were so ready and eager to enter the ninja world, Tsunade said as everyone started reminiscing. Only Nawaki was left out, that is if he hadn't began dozing off to dreamland. Soon enough everyone heard light snoring and looked the sleeping Senju. I'll take him to his room, we've been on a long mission, Orochimaru said, getting up and picking up the sleeping boy, before he walked up the stairs. So you two, how many times have you gotten busy since I left? Jiraiya asked with a lecherous tone to match the grin he had on his face. While Tsunade started fuming in anger, Naruto had a faraway look on his face with a bit of drool dripping out of the corner of his mouth. So not wanting to destroy any part of her house, the blonde immediately grabbed Jiraiya's leg and body flickered out the house, where she beat on him before punching him across the village. She returned to find Naruto in the same state and shook her head as she dragged him upstairs. On the way up they met Orochimaru. I'll see my way out of here, he quickly body flickering out of the house. XXX Wedding Day, July 10th, XXX. Naruto and Kushina was walking in the village. Today was his wedding day but also Kushina's birthday. So they were spending time together before he needed to be at the top of the Hokage mountain for the ceremony, which was at 6 o'clock sharp. One more hour before he was officially married to the love of his life. He was currently wearing a charcoal-colored kimono that had silver trimming. His long silver hair had been cut to only reach his shoulders. Then it was tied in a ponytail, but still had to bangs from his face, as he left those uncut. He looked very regal at the moment. His companion was also looking like royalty. She was wearing a light pink kimono dress that was a perfect contrast of her hair. Her obi was a tad bit darker than her dress, the bow behind her resembling a blossomed rose. Her hair had been combed to perfection and she added a little yellow clip to part the left side of her bangs from in front of her face. Naruto sighed and shook his head. My head hurts so much, I don't think I can fully shake this hangover in an hour, Kushi-chan. The female Uzumaki softly shook her head. No one told you to drink so much last night. What possessed you to do that? You're lucky Tsunade didn't find out. Whatever, Tomato-chan. And plus it was my bachelor party, it's tradition. I threw one for Sakumo some years ago and last night he threw me one. Naruto said, lightly poking her forehead. That still doesn't excuse the fact that you might be late for your own wedding, which I'm sure Tsunade would punch you across the village for. Don't jinx me, he said, seeing his destination. Now seeing as you're turning 9, I think it's time for you to receive a birthday gift I know you're going to like, he said, walking into the weapons store. You're going to buy me a sword? She asked, excitement practically dripping from her voice. I've always wanted one but you nor Mito-bachan would get me one. I love you so much, Ni-chan, she said, hugging him tightly, before running into the store. The dinging of the door gave the notice that somebody had entered. Ah, greetings, Naruto-san, why don't you two have a look around? No, today's Kushi's day, I already have everything I need, Naruto said, going straight for the counter to talk to a friend. Is everything set up, Tensai? Naruto asked the large man. Tensai was a large man, as previously stated, in both weight and height. He had a large bushy black beard that seemed to be getting larger every time he seen it. He wore a blacksmith's apron over his ordinary brown long-sleeved shirt and brown pants. But don't think that his build meant he was fat, nope, it was completely all muscle. He was one of the most renowned blacksmiths in all of Iron Country, where Naruto met him along with Sakumo, Kai and their crazy-ass sensei Shinzu, about 7 years ago. You know it is, I spent a while on this project, the large man replied. At that moment Kushina came back with a dejected look. Sorry, Ni-chan, none of the weapons felt right with me, she said, softly hugging him, but refusing to cry and mess up his kimono. The elder Uzumaki gave a small smile as he lifted her chin. Don't worry your little head, okay Kushina-chan. We'll get you a sword one of these days. Then you'll show me what you learned with a real sword, okay, he said making her smile and nod. Sorry for the interruptions Tensai-san, we'll see you at the wedding right? He asked smiling big. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Tensai said bidding them farewell. After the two Uzumakis left, he began locking up the shop. XXX wedding time XXX. The silver-haired Uzumaki stood at the altar, with his best man Tsukumo standing next to him. Along with him, stood his sensei Shinzu with a lazy look on his face. You know you could smile a little sensei. Naruto whispered to his sensei. I'll smile when I get a cup of sake in my hand, he whispered back with ferocity. Both Naruto and Tsukumo rolled their eyes as giving Shinzu a cup of sake would bring out the worst part of the slave driver that he was. Naruto sighed and scanned the audience, he seen lots of faces of friends. Both Mito and Kushina were sitting in the front row of his side of the mountain top, along with both Yahiko and Nagato. The other side, reserved for Tsunade's family, contained only Nawaki and Konan to act as family. The rest of the seats were obviously filled with friends of both sides. There was Bawako, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Kensai, one of Kai's other friends, a Hyuga woman that gave birth to a set of baby boy twins known as Hizashi and Hiyashi along with her husband, the Hyuga clan head. Also in attendance was the blacksmith Tensai, their old classroom sensei Ryoko, the head of the Uchiha clan with his infant son Fugaku. Even Naruto's young father was in attendance, Minato Namikaze. The kid had no idea why he was invited, but chose not to deny such a privilege. It was more of a psychological reason why he was invited. Now looking on the bride's side, he noticed Kai, acting as Tsunade's maid of honor. They were really good friends, good pregnant friends. She had other females over there, but he had no idea who they were. He should really start paying attention more. Naruto looked forward when he sensed his bride's chakra signature appearing in a shunshin. She was being accompanied by the Hokage himself, walking her down the aisle acting as her father. She looked absolutely elegant in her pure white kimono, he could barely resist the urge to faint in ecstasy. He took a step forward and took her hand in his and they both stood in front of each other, the sun directly in the middle, the day nearing sunset, like they planned. Hiruzen stood near the edge of the cliff, facing the crowd. He was then handed a piece of paper by Naruto. Read that, he whispered. What's that? Tsunade whispered back. You'll see, was the reply she received. The Hokage shrugged and started reading from the now unfolded piece of parchment. We are gathered here today, to join these two sexy people in holy matrimony, the Hokage trailed off. I'm not reading this, he said crumbling up the paper and tossing it over his shoulder and down the mountain. Why thank you Hokage-sama, we are sexy huh? He asked as he and his best man chuckled, while Tsunade playfully slapped his shoulder. Let's get this started properly please. He began as he began saying what was always said before marriage. Now Naruto Uzumaki, do you take Tsunade Senju to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold, through richer and poorer, through sickness and health, till death do you part. I do, Naruto said with a smile on his face. Now Tsunade Senju, do you take Naruto Uzumaki to be your lawfully wedded husband? To have and to hold, through richer and poorer, through sickness and health, till death do you part. Tsunade smiled and looked into Naruto's cerulean blue eyes. I do. Hiruzen smiled. I now pronounce you husband and wife, you may now. He was cut off as Naruto and Tsunade shared a romantic kiss. Continue kissing the bride. Applause erupted all around them as they broke the kiss. Naruto smiled. Watch this. He whispered into her ear, come up here birthday girl, this is your day as well, he said making Kushina do a double take in surprise. Really? She said doing a brisk walk towards the newlyweds. Of course, now are you ready for your gift? He said lifting his hand. The spectators had no idea what was happening, but when they noticed an object fall through the clouds they gasped in surprise. After a mental command, the clone floating in the air, just above the clouds, dispelled in a puff of smoke and released the object he was tasked to carry. The falling was quickly identified as a sword, after it was easily caught by Naruto. Happy birthday Kushi-chan, he said handing her the custom-made Uchigatana sword. For starters, the sheath was made of a very strong material mined in Tsuchi no Kuni and it was colored a deep and dark crimson. The bottom of the sheath was capped with a black material and had a silver engraving of the Uzumaki symbol. The guard was in similar fashion, being a silver symbol for the Uzumaki clan. The handle was wrapped in black bindings and the handle cap was deep crimson with yet another Uzumaki symbol engraving. Kushina took the weapon in her arms. The entire weapon was a little over 2 feet in length. She smiled brightly and secured the weapon to her side and tightly hugged her brother, tears now flowing freely. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she repeated quickly. "No problem, you deserved it," he said, embracing her in a tight hug. "Now I can start teaching you my sword style," he said while thinking about the sword style that was really hers to begin with, but she didn't have to know that. R.I.P. Spirit Mom, he thought, thinking about the grown version of his mother. "Can we start the party now?" Shinzu said, desperate to get a drink before his pregnant wife's mood changed, and boy can her mood change. Naruto released Kushina and embraced his wife. "Sure, go ahead and enjoy the night. Me and my new wife are going to finish this night," he said with a wink as he began drifting off over the mountain top, using his skills to fly to their house. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.